This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in the Inland Empire. Today we are joined again by Mike Soubirous. Big fan of this guy. He always comes on our program. We thank you for your loyalty to Local Edition. It means a lot to us.
It's fun to be here.
I appreciate that. Measure Z, a Riverside City measure passed in November. What is Measure Z?
Measure Z is a 1 cent sales tax added into what normally comes in through the sales tax, which is usually 1%. And it basically doubles what the city gets for sales tax. And it's something the voters voted for that will last 20 years.
I want to talk about that because it's one thing to go to your voters and say, how about 1/8 of a cent?
Right.
Maybe 1/4 of a cent.
Right.
We'll push it with 1/2 cent. You went all the way, man. You
Yes.
went to a full penny.
A full penny.
And your voters by about 60% said, amen.
Do it. Yeah.
How did that happen?
You know, I think they've seen some reforms over the years with our city government, and they see a lot of belt tightening. They see a lot of changes, and I think that they were encouraged, and I think that they figured that, hey, without this, our city is not going to stay in the realm that we've been wanting it.
Because it is a beautiful city. I mean, admittedly, Riverside really, during the recession, it shined. The Renaissance was phenomenal. Our friends in San Bernardino were struggling, and Riverside, you know, really made it through almost unscathed. And so, having covered Riverside for a long time, I guess I'm not that surprised that it passed, but it is reaffirming to electeds like yourself that the voters were willing to say yes.
Yes, I think so.
Let's talk about what the voters also wanted, and they wanted a commission. We can call it oversight, whatever you want to call it. What are we calling it? The BEC Commission?
Right, Budget Engagement Commission.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, and what that is each council member named 2 people from their ward. One had to be a business owner from that ward, and the other one had to be a resident from that ward.
Now, it's interesting because the business owner not necessarily living in the ward, which I think is kind of smart, you know? I mean, they have interest there.
It's giving a perspective from the business side because that's who's collecting these, you know, taxes with the sales and all. And it gets their perspective, and it's a large group, and I think that it's going to be very well balanced from looking at the
because there's 7 wards, and then the mayor has some appointments. So you're going to have some nice input, close to 20 people.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about what they do, though, because this is is it an oversight commission? Can we call it that?
We don't call it that because they don't have the ability to say this is how it's going to be spent.
And that's what I wanted to get to.
They make recommendations to the council.
Explain, sir.
Well, you know, they're a sounding board to the people. You know, it's another layer of being able to have the public interface and work with those that are from their community and give input, and they can give input back and forth. And it creates that sounding board, and also gives that accountability that there's some that are there in place watching for the people on top of their electeds that are watching. And so it's just an extra little fail-safe for them.
What I think is also interesting is that your staff has come to you with a recommendation.
Yes.
And when I say your staff, meaning city staff.
City staff, city management, executive management.
Right, and it's not a recommendation that's mandated by Measure Z. What was their recommendation, sir?
Well, their recommendation number 1 was to keep the pot of money separate from the general fund so that money will be strictly accountable. It'll have its own standalone account, and money will be tapped from that for specific needs, almost like a bank account. And as some of those needs diminish or increase, the money would flow in there. And then let's say that we put in an extra $1 million into the budget for public works for road paving. Let's say in 3 to 4 years we get fairly well caught up with some of the road paving. That money that was supplemented can go back or not be drawn out from that Measure Z pot and be put towards something else that maybe is now a dire need.
So from your tone, I presume you support the recommendation.
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea. And one thing that's kind of interesting about this is when we had kind of our budget meltdown last May, and we had the discovery.
I think it was more fear than anything.
Well, I mean, when we found out we had the budget shortfall.
But did you really have the shortfall, or was it a paper shortfall?
No, it was a shortfall.
Okay.
It was big time.
Okay.
And so that money that we thought was there and we had been told was there from the previous administration was not.
Right.
And what happened is we went into the 4% across the board cuts. Now, if you think about this is really good from the taxpayer point of view. We did some deep cuts across the board, 4%. Those are still in place. So this money that comes out of this Measure Z pot will supplement those budgetary items that are needed to be pumped up when they need to be pumped up for the need. Like, for instance, increasing the number of officers from RPD. We've seen a decrease through attrition. We're proposing to boost it up by 60 officers. It may take a little while to get there, but once we get there, their budget should be able to assume that extra amount of officers.
Let's talk about officers and other items, because I know you have the budget committee, engagement committee, and they're going to give you recommendations.
Right.
But as I understand it, as you were walking and talking, you, all 7 of you, and the mayor, in support of Measure Z, what were you hearing? Where do the voters want to spend the money? Because I remind our viewers, this was a general sales tax.
Right, so we
You
could
didn't
not
dedicate
identify.
it.
We couldn't by
Yeah,
law
right.
identify specific items it would go to, otherwise we would have had to request a 2/3 vote.
Which is so interesting. I
Yeah.
always find that bizarre, because you would think if there's specifics.
Yes, it'd be the other way around.
The other way
but see, the
around.
Prop 13 people, when they proposed this years
Yeah.
ago, they didn't think that the voters would approve too many 50% plus 1 votes without identifying. So they kind of just left it alone. So they said, okay, if you're going to do this, you got to have a 2/3 vote.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
for
another
specific items.
Other
Yeah.
conversation. So
Isn't
what
that
are you
amazing?
hearing?
We're hearing that the people want their roads fixed. They want the tree trimming cycles, you know, from 8 to 9 years back down to 3, 4 years. They want to see those curbs, gutters, and sidewalks. A lot of them damaged from the trees. They want to see that replaced. Basically, infrastructure. They want their infrastructure brought up to par.
It's expensive.
It is very.
It's expensive. I mean, I think about the trees that, what are they? Are they conifers? I can't remember which trees were very popular.
Chamelash.
Chamelash. I mean, they destroy the sidewalks.
And pipes and
Beautiful.
sewers and
We didn't know that when we put them in,
Yeah.
in the 50s.
Yeah.
It's expensive to replace those sidewalks.
yes.
I know LA a few years back entered into that, I think, this 50-50 program.
Right.
Where if the owner of the sidewalk in front of their house that was buckled would pay 50%, you jump to the top of the list.
Yeah.
Are you thinking of that, or not necessary at this stage?
That just would not go over popular in Riverside.
Okay.
I guarantee it would not.
Okay.
It's just,
So do we have the money, the $53 million a year? Is that going to make a dent?
It's going to work on it progressively. Some of that money is going to be spent on that. Some of them on additional officers, should the council approve all that. It's all being proposed. But
Let's talk about
it looks
officers.
like it'll get there. Yeah.
Let's talk about officers, because Riverside does have its own police force, does
Right.
not contract with the county.
That's correct.
Well liked.
Yes. Supported.
Yeah, supported. And so, did you lose officers during the recession?
Yes, in a way we did.
Attrition?
I believe we had close to 400 officers, 401 or 412,
Right.
some number like that. And we're down to less than 340.
And is that because of attrition or because of a decision to not hire more? I mean,
It
what
was
happened?
probably just a little bit of cutbacks on funding over the
Right.
years that have just dropped it down, plus the attrition, plus it's harder and harder to find qualified candidates that want to be into law enforcement,
Really?
that want to get into law enforcement. We had this similar issue years ago, and that's why they kind of got creative with, you know, a lot of municipalities in
Right.
the state with that 3% at 50, with the
Which
90% cap, and it's, you know, for a retirement package. So that
And
was
you're a
offered.
former CHP, by the way.
Yes.
I would remind our viewers.
And that was proposed instead of a pay increase. And as we saw with time, with some of the investments with CalPERS, it you know, didn't
go so
necessarily
well.
come out so well.
Right. So, are we looking at a number? I mean, do you want to get up to 400? Is that the goal?
I think the immediate goal is to try for 60 and then increase it from there. I know a lot of the council
So try
members.
for 60, so that would get you to about 400,
Yes,
no?
and I know
Okay.
that a lot of the council members have voiced in council meetings they'd like to see maybe 100. But it's going to be a difficult goal to get to within the next couple of years. And we're also hoping at council that we don't just have all new hires, because number one, you're going to have the training officer issue that
And
takes
that's
some time.
expensive.
You also have a lot of new people that they're gung-ho, they're good, but maybe the experience level on certain things isn't as good, and it may be a little costly.
What about recruiting veterans? I
Well,
feel like
and
they're
that's
a
the thing
great
with
resource.
laterals.
Right.
And the nice thing about that is we don't want to set up a future council 25, 30 years from now that will see 60 people retire within a year.
Oh, I understand.
So if
it
you have
is
a variety
ranked.
of
I
folks, you can
understand.
kind of spread that out, and it's
But
not
can we
such a
still
big
look to
hit.
the veterans? I feel
Yes.
like that they come with a
Absolutely.
breadth of experience
No.
that's on point.
We are going to aggressively seek those on laterals
Okay,
that
good to
are
hear.
working for
He
the
is Mike
departments.
Subaru. He is a councilman in the city of Riverside, where we are today. I'm Brad Pomerance on Local Edition.